Hi, this is a quick guide how to get started in the Avid Media Composer. I've been using this software for about 20 years now. And compared to other editing softwares, this is not the easiest one to get started in. It's not so logical built. But once you get into it, I promise you, you'll be one of the fastest editors. And because this software is so widely used in all of the business, in the editing world, of broadcast and movie business, you'll definitely help yourself by knowing Avid Media Composer and better your chances to get the job. About 70% of all films and documentaries, reality shows, broadcasting is made on Avid Media Composer. That's why it's so important that you learn this software. I'm not saying this is the best software in the world, and I'm not saying this is the only tool you need to learn. But if you want to break through in the movie business or broadcasting business, you need to know the software. Welcome to the quick guide of getting started in the Avid Media Composer. All right, first thing first, if you haven't got Avid Media Composer installed on your system, and if you're not working at a post house yet, you need to download the newest Media Composer you can find. You can get the free one called Media Composer First on avid.com. But if you can get your hands on Avid Media Composer Ultimate, I recommend you download that version or get that version and install it. It's the full version and it'll give you a 30-day trial and use those 30 days to get as good as possible. So what you do is, once you downloaded your Avid Media Composer, you open the installer and install it. Once that is all done, you'll restart the computer and then we'll try to find the Avid Media Composer editing software. I'm just gonna quit this because I've done this multiple times and I don't wanna waste your time on showing you installing screens. Usually you'll find the Media Composer in your start menu, but if it doesn't show up here, what you can do is you can hit the search bar and just start writing Avid, and it already says Avid Media Composer, and I'm just gonna hit enter. If you're on a PC, you can do the same thing by searching. And it'll take a while to start up the first time. I can see here my Avid Media Composer has started up, and in a few seconds it'll show up on the screen. Here I can see it's a Media Composer version 2024-10. This is the first screen you'll see once the Avid Media Composer has started up. If this is the first time you ever open a Media Composer on your own computer, this whole field here would probably be empty. But because I use this on a daily basis, I'll have multiple projects in the projects window. So what you need to do is, if it's the first time or if there's no projects prior to your installation, you can make a new project. And you can name the project whatever you want. I'll just give this project a really boring name. I'm based in Europe, and in Europe we usually use 2080p 25 frames. This can be used in both in the Americas and in Europe and worldwide. If you're working on your own, it doesn't matter so much what you set up the project to be. Just remember where you're gonna output it to. If it's YouTube or if it's for broadcasting or for movies, then you need to make sure that you have the right frame settings, and if it's an HD or 4K project you're working on. In this case, we're just gonna make a 2080p 25 frames project. Next off, you can choose to create a user profile, and in a later video, I'll get into why it's so important to make a user profile. But right now, I'm just gonna tell you, you don't want to mess up someone else's user profile, so always create your own user profile so you make sure not to piss anyone off. Here you can choose how you want your Media Composer to look like. If you're coming from the Adobe Premiere, you can choose that. I'm just going to choose the regular one, how it looks today. Type my name, and again, I'm going to call it test because I already have a user profile. Hit OK. So now you're all set, and you can hit create down here. Boom, you just made your own project for the first time, maybe. Anyway, if you're working on one screen, this is how the Avid Media Composer is going to look like. Here you have your project windows or bins. In this case, it only has one bin. In other programs, they might call it a folder, but in here you can also make a new folder. I'm just going to do that and call it pianos. So we got folders, bins, And inside the bins is where your media is living. This is the player window, and this is the timeline window. Over here we have the different workspaces, and in this video we're mainly gonna concentrate about the edit workspace. But you have color for color grading, and you have effects when you work in effects, and then of course you have audio. And these are all presets, but you can make your own workspaces if you want to use all of these tools at the same time. Now you've seen how it's going to look if you don't have any material or don't have a project prior to this project. But what I want to do to speed up things, I'm going to jump out of this project and I'm going to open a project that I'm going to give to you so you can follow along at your own pace. I used the shortcut Shift-Command-W to close the project and not closing the program. I'm just closing the project. I'll put all the shortcuts on the screen so I don't have to tell you all the shortcuts. Plus, in the description, there will be a PDF that you can download with all the shortcuts in Avid Media Composer. This is a demo project, Fast Start Scramble King, and it's a project that you can download. Right now, I'm just gonna open it. So in this example, someone has started the project before you. Let's imagine you're at a post house and you need to help the editor to find some interview clips or import some media for the editor. A very simple project would look something like this. If I'm co-editing with someone on a project, first thing I always do when I start up the project for the first time is make a new folder. I always name it by my name. And right now I don't have any bins in my folder. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a few bins. I call this Janus work, and I can always edit the names afterwards. And then I'm gonna make a new bin called Janus save, and a third one, Janus import. I'll have a whole bunch of different bins in my own folder, but this is just to get you started. So we made 3 different bins, and I can just close them all by highlighting all the bins and say Command W. So now they're all closed. I'm gonna start by just opening my Janus import bin, and I'm gonna right click in the bin, say input, import media. And I have a bunch of practice media on my hard drive, and I'm just gonna collect these 3 movies and say open. When I just say import media like that, it will just import the QuickTimes and transcode it into DNX files, which is Avid's own codec. And this will just make them play quicker. Now I have the files in my Avid Media Composer, and I can start editing. We use bins and folders to organize our media, and this is the overview window, so to say. And inside these bins, there will be small files living. And once I click on the files, you can see they pop up in the player window. And if I want to edit a piece of the interview into my timeline, I can make a in point by hitting I for in, and then I can hit O for out, and I can just drag it into the timeline. And what happens now is that the Avid Media Composer is going to ask me where to put this timeline. But for now, I'm just going to say okay to make a new timeline in my Janus import bin, and it's taken my clip into the timeline. And it looks like this clip has a stereo track, and that's why it put it on to the stereo track with the 2 speakers. When the tracks down here only have 1 speaker, it means that it's a mono track. All right, so we made a sequence with 1 clip in it. To play it, we can hit spacebar.
All right, got this. Got this.
And of course, we had too much material in it. It looks like I made an endpoint too early before he starts talking or answering the question.
Back when I was 14.
So I'm using JKL to move around my timeline, and here it sounds like he's ready to start his interview. What I can do down in my timeline, I can make an out point, and I can go to the beginning of my sequence, and I can use the scissors or X to cut out the beginning.
I started jiu-jitsu.
I could do a better edit than this. We'll just leave it as it is.
So if you learn the same position over and over again, there's always something different, there's always something new, and that's what I liked about it.
Good. He's finished talking. I'm gonna make an in point, go to the end of my clip, hit O for out, and again, use my X to cut out what I don't need to have in the sequence. I can go up to my sequence. Instead of being called untitled sequence, I will call it first cut. I'm gonna call it V1 for version 1. And really, I don't want the sequence to live in my import bin. I actually want it to live in my work bin. So what I can do is I can drag my sequence and drop it into the work bin. And what the Media Composer will do is it will open the bin that previously was closed and drop in my sequence and open the bin. As we can see, I have one sequence in my bin now. So what I can do now is I can keep going, maybe finding some other parts of the interviews I like to cut in, or I can go back to my import bin and I want to start off with a intro picture of the drone shot showing where in the world we are. I'm gonna use it as an establishing shot. All right, I'm happy with the output here. And usually what you can do is if the cursor is at the end, you can just hit B and it'll dump it after the last clip that I put in my sequence. And because this clip doesn't have any sound on it, it'll only show one video over here, or V1, and it will cut it down to V1. If I wanted this shot, what I did was say Command Z for undo. So if I wanted this shot to cover his talking for the first few seconds, I could go back to the beginning, make an in point and an out point, go up to my player window and go to in and check if this is the right spot. I'm just going to change my in point a little bit. Now what I can do is I can edit this clip on top of his start. To make sure I don't delete audio or anything or video, I need to uncheck all these tracks. But let's just see what happens if I hit B for override, and it actually overwritten the whole beginning, and now I'm missing the first part of the interview and the picture of him in the interview. So I'm gonna do Command Z or Control Z on PC and undo it. So what I need to do is I need to turn off all the audio tracks to make sure my audio is gonna stay there. And what I can do is I can turn off the video track 1, and then I'm making sure that I still have the original video track here. Usually what I like to do is to keep all my material in track 1, and then I'll use track 2 for graphics, titles, and so forth. And then I'll put effects on top of here. But for now, I'm just gonna make sure I'm not deleting the track that I have on track 1. So this means that when I drag video 1 to some other number, it shows me where the player material, my clip over here in the player window, will end up in the timeline. So I want video 1 to go to video 2 track on the timeline like that. And because I highlighted my in and out in the sequence, I can see where it's gonna put my drone shot. I'm gonna hit B for override, and now I have a drone shot on top of my start interview.
I started jiu-jitsu back when I was 14, and at the time I started because...
And already now I feel anxious to edit some of his interview.
I had been playing soccer, and at the time I started because...
it's quite annoying. And what I can do is I can use JKL to find my beginning. And I can take out my M, and these are making sure that everything is in sync. I don't want to edit the picture I put on top of here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn all these off. I made my in point and out point, and now I'm gonna make sure that I don't delete or edit out anything in my drone shot. So I'm gonna turn off track 2 to make sure I'm only editing track 6 and video 1. Then I'm gonna hit my scissors. If you have an Avid keyboard, the X has the scissors on it. Cut out the M, play it back to check.
I started because I'd been playing soccer for...
Yeah, you saw what happened. We can't see the drone shot anymore. To hide the jump edit, instead of just monitoring track 1 as we do now, I'm gonna monitor track 2 or the top track and play it back. I started jiu-jitsu back when I was 14, and at the time I started because I'd been playing soccer for... Yeah, now I already start editing before I should. Usually what I do is I lay all my interviews down into the sequence, and then I start editing out all the pauses and so forth and build up my story. Then I'm gonna start with B-roll like I did here. If you wanna add transitions, you can add a quick to solve.
I had a few different issues when I was younger, I guess.
I wouldn't recommend putting a lot of effects on in the beginning. I would concentrate about getting the story right. Start off by editing the whole interview section and divide it up in bits and pieces. Make sure you have air in between. All right, once we edit all our interviews, clips into our timeline and we figure out how to set it up, what the beginning is gonna be in the middle and all that. And then I'll start inserting sound bites. And what I recommend is that always get to know your material and scroll through everything. Could be something like this, and you would divide it in between the interview clips. These could be complimentary clips or reaction moments of what's happening, and this would definitely be a reaction moment. Then if you find some good sound bites that relates to his interview, I would start editing those in. And after that whole timeline has done, now I got my story set, then I would start putting in some B-roll. And after that, and then we'll start to re-edit it again to make sure I cut out all the pauses and it has an even flow and a good storyline throughout the whole sequence. But this is how you get started quick. Once you're done with your sequence and you're happy with it, what you can do is you can export it out from the Avid Media Composer. I want to show you one really cool thing in the Media Composer. It's more a advanced feature, but we have this interview that we cut and we didn't cut it very nicely. What you can do is go into Tools, hit the Transcript tool, and if it hasn't transcribed sequence, or if it is on the player window, we'll just hit here and it'll look at the sequence. And if it hasn't transcribed, you can hit the transcribe button, which will be here in the middle of the screen, and it'll transcribe the whole thing and you'll end up with a text similar to what I got here in the timeline. So what I can do is, first clip here, it states I started jiu-jitsu, blah, blah, blah. I started because, and you can see when I highlight the text, it makes an in and out in the timeline, which is really great. So if I want to edit out all of this, so what I can do is I can just highlight the part of the text that I want to edit out. So if I want to cut this first bit out, and start with I felt like I needed something else, I highlighted text that I want to delete and it has made an in point and an out point, and you can see it here in the timeline as well. Then I'm gonna hit X on my keyboard and now it's edited away.
At the time I started because I felt like I needed something else to exert my energy.
And if we play it back with our drone shot on top.
I started jiu-jitsu back when I was 14, and at the time I started because I felt like I needed something else to exert my energy.
And we can make it a bit smoother if we want to.
And at the time I started because I felt like I needed...
He's saying I twice. I'm just gonna edit that out.
And at the time I started because I felt like I needed something else to exert my...
And now you can't tell that I did the edit. You can do audio dissolves as well. I'm turning off my video track and leaving on my audio track, and then I'm gonna hit the dissolve button or quick transition button and hit add, and now I made a...
Started because I felt like I needed something else to...
And that was a bit too long. Change it again, make it shorter.
I started because I felt like I needed something else to exert my...
We can trim it by hitting U for the trim tool.
And at the time I started because I felt like I needed something else.
And there you have it. If you want to know more about adding audio dissolves, I'll leave a link in the description and on the screen for you. Next step is to export it. What you can do is you can do it in and out at the beginning and at the end. And I'm hitting Command A to highlight all the tracks that I want to export, going back to my beginning, and I'm just going to right click on my timeline window, find export, and now it's set to do a AAF. I want to go into options and I'm gonna say export as MPEG-4 if it's going to YouTube. So let's just collect that and gonna use Morix. And I'm gonna leave the output frame rate the same as the project is set. This video is gonna be for YouTube, so I'm gonna change the codec for something that fits YouTube more and hit save. I could change the name here, decide where I want to save it. I'm gonna save it on my external drive and hit save. And now it will export an MPEG-4 for YouTube. A few tips when working in the Avid Media Composer: remember to save often by saying Command S or Control S, and remember to organize your bins. I'm just gonna close this transcript window. Remember to organize your bins into folders, and more you work in Avid Media Composer, you get better at it. If you found this video helpful, please like the video and subscribe, and comment if you have any questions, and we'll make a deep dive into Avid Media Composer later on. Until next time, let's be better editors together.